Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Milan Soccer Club podcast. I'm Alice, and wow, what a week, right? The episode title kind of says it all. Milan Champions League's auto-destruction. I'm still a bit shocked by the elimination, to be honest. Last time we had a hot debate on what happened. And I have to say, Paul, I don't think I've ever seen you so upset with a specific player like you were with Theo Hernandez.
Oh, Alice, don't remind me. It was frustrating, to say the least. I mean, his red card basically sealed our fate. But yeah, I was heated. Passionate, you could say. And you're right, I still can't believe what a mess we did.
I know. And you know what? That last episode, we recorded it right outside San Siro. And after the recording, we took a walk. And honestly, the atmosphere was just depressing. Fans were so upset, so sad. But we promised ourselves and our listeners that this episode would be a bit more analytical. Less ranting, more understanding, right?
Exactly, Alice. We're going to break down what this elimination really means for Milan, both on and off the field. We're talking about a potential €11 million loss, a UEFA ranking crisis for Italian teams, Ibrahimovic's intervention, potential player exits, a possible summer revolution within the team, defense restructuring plans, recent performance stats under Conceicao, and ultimately, what our objectives are for the rest of the season.
Okay, so a full plate then. A lot to unpack. Let's start with the obvious one. The financial hit from the Champions League elimination. Paul, how big of a deal is this €11 million loss, plus the missed match revenue from, say, a game against Inter or Arsenal, really?
Alice, this is huge. €11 million, especially for a club like Milan that's trying to balance the books, is a significant blow. It impacts our ability to invest in new players, upgrade facilities, and, just generally compete at the highest level. And you have to consider the opportunity cost. Imagine the revenue we would have generated from a home game in the quarterfinals or even the semifinals, especially against a rival like Inter or a powerhouse like Arsenal. We're talking potentially millions more in ticket sales, merchandise, sponsorships. It's a cascading effect.
Okay, so it's not just the €11 million directly, but also all the potential revenue streams that disappear with it. Right, got it. So to everyone listening, this isn't just about pride, it's about serious money that impacts the entire club. But is this €11 million going to bankrupt the team or something?
No, absolutely not. Milan isn't going bankrupt. Redbird Capital, our owners, are financially sound. They've invested heavily, and they are committed to the long-term success of the club. However, this loss definitely tightens the belt. It means we have to be smarter with our spending, more strategic with our transfers. We might have to rely more on developing young talent from our academy, or, finding undervalued players in the market. This is a setback, not a catastrophe.
Okay, that makes sense. It's a hit, but not a knockout punch. It forces us to be more resourceful. Now, let's talk about something even bigger, potentially. The UEFA ranking crisis. Milan, Juventus, Atalanta, all out of the Champions League. What does this mean for Italy's chances of getting those extra Champions League spots in the future? And why is securing that fourth place in Serie A so crucial now?
This, Alice, is where things get really interesting and honestly, a bit worrying for Italian football as a whole. So, the UEFA coefficient ranking is based on the performance of all clubs from a particular country in European competitions over the past 5 seasons. The better our teams do, the higher our ranking, and the more spots we get in the Champions League, Europa League, and Conference League. With Milan, Juve, and Atalanta all crashing out early, our ranking takes a significant hit.
Okay, so fewer teams doing well means a lower ranking. Makes sense. But what's the immediate impact?
Well, for this season, it doesn't change anything. But for future seasons, it could mean that Serie A gets fewer guaranteed spots in the Champions League. And that's why securing that fourth place is absolutely vital. It's the bare minimum we need to guarantee our place in the competition next year. If we fail to finish in the top 4, we risk missing out on the Champions League altogether, regardless of what happens with the UEFA ranking in the future.
Wow. Okay. So it's not just about Milan's future. It's about the future of Italian football in Europe. No pressure then. So Paul, what if Italy doesn't get the fourth spot? I mean, if fifth place doesn't get in, How does that affect the financials, and what players would we be able to bring in?
That's a great question, Alice. If we miss out on Champions League qualification, finishing 5th or lower, the financial implications are severe. We're talking about a significant drop in revenue, potentially tens of millions of euros. This directly impacts our transfer budget, limiting our ability to attract top-tier players. The Champions League is a huge draw for players. It's where they want to compete, it boosts their profile, and frankly, it increases their market value. Without Champions League football, we'd likely have to target a different type of player. Perhaps younger, less established talents, or players from leagues outside the top 5. It also makes it harder to retain our best players, as they might be tempted to move to clubs that can offer them Champions League football. The loss of Champions League revenue would also force us to be more reliant on player sales to balance the books, potentially leading to the departure of key players that we'd rather keep.
Okay, so the stakes are incredibly high. The loss of Champions League football triggers a domino effect, impacting our finances, transfer strategy, and ability to compete at the highest level. It's a vicious cycle. What are your thoughts on how this UEFA coefficient ranking and the importance of the 4th spot affect the strategy for the rest of the season?
It completely reshapes our strategy for the remainder of the season. Every single match becomes a must-win. Conceicao needs to prioritize Serie A above all else. The Coppa Italia is important, of course, but securing that 4th spot has to be the overriding objective. This means managing the squad carefully, rotating players to avoid injuries and burnout, and ensuring that we're peaking at the right time. We also need to be tactically flexible, adapting our approach to suit each opponent. We can't afford to be complacent or take any game for granted. The pressure is immense, but we have to embrace it and use it as motivation. The team needs to show resilience, determination, and a winning mentality. Now more than ever, every player needs to step up and deliver their best performance, week in, week out. The consequences of failure are simply too great to contemplate.
Absolutely. Every game is a final now. Let's move on to something else that sounds pretty intense: Ibrahimovic's intervention. Apparently, he locked the team and coach in the locker room after that defeat. What exactly happened in that emergency meeting at Milanello, and how did Theo Hernandez's apology play into it?
Okay, so according to reports, Zlatan basically gathered the entire squad and Conceicao in the locker room, looked everyone in the eye, and, laid down the law. Before he said anything, he gave Theo Hernandez the opportunity to apologize to his teammates for the red card against Feyenoord. Apparently, Theo did apologize, acknowledging that his actions had let the team down. But Zlatan didn't stop there.
Okay, so Theo owned up to his mistake. Good, but what did Ibra say after that? I imagine it wasn't a gentle pat on the back.
Exactly. It was a short but very direct speech, according to Tuttosport. He basically told the team that excuses were over, no more alibis. He demanded, not asked, for an immediate reaction in the league. He made it clear that securing that 4th place was non-negotiable, not just for the club's image and finances, but also for the future of many players, and crucially, for Conceicao himself.
Wow, that's classic Ibra. No sugarcoating, just straight to the point. No more excuses. I love it! But do you think that kind of approach actually works in the modern game? Some players might find it a bit too aggressive, right?
It's a fair question, Alice. Some might see it as old school, even bullying. But I think with this Milan team, at this particular moment, it was exactly what they needed. They've been underperforming, lacking direction, and maybe even lacking belief. Zlatan's presence, his aura, his winning mentality, it can be incredibly powerful. He's a legend, a role model. When he speaks, people listen. And sometimes you need that tough love, that kick up the backside, to get players to wake up and realize what's at stake. Plus, Ibra has the credibility to back it up. He's not just some random executive. He's been there, done that, won everything. Players respect that.
Okay, I get your point. It's not just about being aggressive. It's about earning the right to be aggressive through your achievements and experience. But do you think it was really needed? Or is it too little too late?
It's definitely not too late. There's still plenty of the season left to play, and we're only a few points off the Champions League spots. I think Ibrahimovic's intervention was perfectly timed. It came after a particularly demoralizing defeat when the team was at its lowest point. It was a wake-up call, a reset button. Now, it's up to the players and Conceicao to respond. If they can channel that energy and motivation, we can definitely turn things around. But if they don't, then yeah, it might be seen as a missed opportunity.
All right, that's fair. Speaking of Conceicao, his future seems to be hanging by a thread, right? Everything depends on securing that fourth place. Is that really fair to him, considering he only arrived recently?
Well, that's the brutal reality of football, Alice. Managers are judged on results, especially at a club like Milan with such high expectations. While it's true that Conceicao hasn't been in charge for long, he was brought in to steady the ship and secure Champions League qualification. And yes, according to multiple reports, including Il Corriere dello Sport, his future is strictly linked to qualifying for the next Champions League. If we fail, a new revolution on the bench is not out of the question.
Okay, so it's a high-pressure situation for him. But is it realistic to expect him to completely turn things around in such a short space of time?
It is a tough ask, no doubt. But Conceicao knew what he was signing up for. He's an experienced coach with a proven track record. He's shown glimpses of what he can do, and we've actually picked up 14 points under his leadership, which is only 1 point less than Napoli, the current league leaders. But consistency has been lacking. We need to see more stability, more tactical clarity, and ultimately, more wins. And let's be honest, Alice, with the squad we have, with the resources at our disposal, a Champions League place should be the minimum requirement.
Sure, I mean, you're right. It's not like he got there with a small team. He got basically all the talent in the world on his hands. So what happens if Conceicao fails to get the fourth spot? Who would be likely to replace him? And what kind of manager would Milan need at that point?
If Conceicao fails to secure Champions League qualification, the managerial merry-go-round will start spinning again, no doubt. Potential replacements are already being speculated upon in the Italian media. Names like Roberto De Zerbi, who's been doing fantastic work at Brighton, and even former Milan coach Stefano Pioli have been mentioned. But honestly, it's all speculation at this point. What Milan would need at that juncture is a manager who can provide stability, tactical expertise, and a clear long-term vision. Someone who can build a cohesive team, develop young talent, and instill a winning mentality. It would also be crucial to find a manager who can work effectively with the club's management and sporting director, creating a collaborative environment where everyone is pulling in the same direction. After so much instability, Milan needs a manager who can lay down solid foundations and guide the club back to its former glory.
Okay, so it sounds like a managerial change is almost inevitable if we don't get that fourth spot. That leads us nicely to the potential summer revolution. Apparently, even Rafael Leao's future is uncertain, with a possible €80 million transfer on the cards. Paul, is anyone safe at Milanello right now?
Honestly, Alice, it seems like very few players are guaranteed to stay. According to reports, the management is prepared to make drastic changes to the squad, regardless of whether we qualify for the Champions League or not. Too many things have happened this season that can't be ignored. And yes, even Rafael Leao, our star player, is reportedly in the balance. If a bid of around €80 million comes in, Milan might be tempted to sell.
80 million for Leao. That's a lot of money. But is it worth selling our best player, even if we need to raise funds?
It's a difficult decision, no doubt. Leao is a fantastic talent, capable of moments of brilliance. But he's also been inconsistent at times, and he hasn't always lived up to his full potential. €80 million could be reinvested in several other players, strengthening multiple areas of the squad. It could allow us to bring in a more balanced and cohesive team, rather than relying on individual brilliance. Plus, there's the risk that Leao's value might decline if he continues to be inconsistent, or if he suffers a serious injury. So, from a purely financial perspective, it might make sense to cash in while his stock is high. However, there's also the risk that we'd regret selling him, especially if he goes on to become a superstar elsewhere. It's a gamble either way.
Okay, that's a really nuanced take. So, it's a risk-reward calculation. What about Theo Hernandez? Is he definitely on his way out after that red card fiasco?
It's looking increasingly likely, Alice. The red card against Feyenoord seems to have been the final straw. According to La Gazzetta dello Sport, the adventure of Theo Hernandez at Milan seems to be coming to an end. The club isn't convinced about offering him a new contract, especially after his disappointing season. There are reportedly two options. Either Milan receives a suitable offer for him in the summer, or he stays against his will until 2026 and then leaves on a free transfer.
Wow, that's a pretty harsh assessment. He's been such a key player for us over the years. Is it really just about that one red card, or is there more to it?
The red card was definitely a major factor, but it's also about his overall form this season. He hasn't been as consistent as he was in previous years, and there have been question marks over his attitude and commitment. Plus, there's the financial aspect. Theo is one of our highest paid players, and if we can get a good offer for him, it would free up significant wages to invest in other areas of the squad. It's a tough decision because he's still a very talented player, but sometimes you have to make difficult choices for the good of the team.
Okay, so it sounds like a perfect storm of factors that are leading to his likely departure. It's sad to see him go, but maybe it's the right time for a fresh start for both him and the club. What about the defense as a whole? Are we planning a major overhaul there as well?
Yes, Alice. The defense is definitely an area that needs addressing. According to reports, Strahinja Pavlovic has impressed Conceicao and is likely to stay. However, Malik Thiaw and Fikayo Tomori could be on their way out. Thiaw is attracting interest from clubs in England and Germany, while Tomori was almost sold in January. The club is reportedly willing to listen to offers for both of them in the summer.
Wow, that's surprising. I thought Tomori was one of our key defenders. Why are we considering selling him?
Tomori's form has dipped this season, and he's lost his place in the starting lineup under Conceicao. There are also concerns about his consistency and decision-making. Plus, as with Theo Hernandez, there's the financial aspect. Tomori is a valuable asset, and selling him could generate significant funds to reinvest in the squad. The club might also be looking to bring in a different type of defender, perhaps someone who is more comfortable playing in a high defensive line, or who is better on the ball.
Okay, so it's about squad balance and tactical flexibility, as well as generating funds. It sounds like we're planning a major revamp of the entire team. And apparently we're also expecting a new sporting director to arrive. Who are the candidates, and what kind of impact could that have?
Yes, Alice, a new sporting director is expected to arrive, and that appointment could be crucial in shaping the club's future. The sporting director is responsible for identifying and recruiting new players, negotiating contracts, and overseeing the club's scouting network. They also play a key role in setting the club's transfer strategy and working with the manager to build a competitive squad. Potential candidates are already being linked with the job, but it's too early to say who the frontrunner is. The key is to find someone with a proven track record, a strong network of contacts, and a clear vision for the club's future.
Okay, a new sporting director could be the key to a successful summer revolution. And there are so many changes that are needed, right? So before we run out of time, let's quickly touch on the team's recent performance stats under Conceicao. 14 points in the league, only 1 point behind Napoli. That sounds pretty good, right?
On the surface, yes, it's a decent record. But as we've discussed, it's not just about points. It's about consistency and momentum. We've had some good wins, but also some disappointing defeats, and we haven't always been convincing in our performances. We need to find a way to string together a run of victories and build some confidence. The upcoming games are crucial. We need to take each match as it comes, focus on our own performance, and not worry too much about what other teams are doing. If we can do that, we have a good chance of securing that fourth place.
Right, focus on ourselves and take it one game at a time. Easier said than done, right? So to wrap things up, Paul, what are the team's remaining objectives for the season? We've talked about Champions League qualification, but what about the Coppa Italia?
The Coppa Italia is definitely a priority, Alice. It's a chance to win a trophy and give the fans something to celebrate. Plus, winning the Coppa Italia guarantees a place in the Europa League next season, which could be a valuable consolation prize if we fail to qualify for the Champions League. But let's be clear, Champions League qualification is the ultimate goal. It's the most prestigious competition, it generates the most revenue, and it attracts the best players. We need to give everything we have to achieve that objective.
All right, so Coppa Italia is a nice to have, but Champions League is a must-have. High stakes indeed. So to everyone listening, that's the situation at Milan right now. A tough Champions League elimination, a UEFA ranking crisis, a team management shakeup, potential player exits, and a desperate fight for that fourth place. It's going to be a wild ride until the end of the season, that's for sure.
Absolutely, Alice. And whether you agree with the changes or the methods or not, one thing is for sure, this team will be completely different next year. The question is, better or worst?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Or should I say, the 80 million euro question, given Leao's potential transfer fee. Thanks for all the insights, Paul. And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us for more Milan news and analysis. And let us know in the comments, what do you think of all these potential changes? Are you optimistic or worried about the future of Milan? We want to hear your thoughts. Until next time, Forza Milan.